Hey everybody, it's Dave Dugdale, learningvideo.com. So crew or rowing or whatever the proper term is, I don't even know, is pretty hard to not only be a spectator but also film, because once they put the boat in the water and they push off and they get away from the shoreline, like right here they're close to the shore, but once they get far away, like on the other side of the reservoir, it's very hard to film. And here's with the 1:400 lens from Sony in crop mode on the A7R3, so it's more like a 600 millimeter lens, which can give you a little bit more reach when you're trying to get at least some faces into the frame. Now normally when I do a review, I like to compare the lens to something. This is the 1:400, this is my 70-200. They're both about the same size and weight. This one, when you zoom, does not extend out. The 1:400 zooms when you zoom out. Now I can compare both of these at 200 like you see here in terms of sharpness, but that's not really a great comparison because most of the time when I'm shooting with this, I'm shooting at 400 millimeters. So it's not really a fair comparison. Now you could get the 400 millimeter from Sony, which I think is like $12,000, but I kind of stay away from that because it's just something I don't think anybody would ever actually buy. Perhaps you guys would rent it. And this is actually a lens that I don't think I'd ever buy. I would probably rent on weekends for like 50 bucks a weekend, and I wouldn't rent it but just a few weekends a year. So to me, it doesn't make sense to really buy this when I don't use it that often. Now, one of the things I'll say, if you invest in a lens like this, you might want to invest in a good tripod, because I don't have any really great video tripods. Most of mine are lightweight photography-based tripods with a fluid head on them. But this one, I think you need a better fluid head, a better basically standing structure, tripod to mount this on. Because even when you put the lens hood on it and the wind gets inside of it, even I would say higher than a light breeze, but a little bit faster than that, even with the image stabilization turned on a light tripod, it just kind of moves around a little bit too much and creates a very shaky image, unfortunately. Now what you see here is I'm kind of swapping out my 70-200 lens with the 1:400 lens, and just to see if you guys can see any difference between the two in terms of sharpness. I've run sharpness test. I couldn't really see that much of a difference, and I was just shooting a lot with both cameras, one like when they're close to the shore like this, so this is obviously the 70-200, and then once when they're much farther out. If you can see any sharpness difference, I couldn't. They both are very sharp, and in terms of the autofocus, because I was focusing on the boats using my finger on the screen in terms of putting a box where the boat was so it would stay on them. And in terms of autofocus, they both work really well for video, and they also worked really well for photography as well. I was shooting some kite sailors out on the water as well, and they were the autofocus was performing just as well as it does on my 70-200. Now, I read every review on the B&H website. Everybody thought it was tack sharp except for one person. Maybe I had the bad copy. One of the things I noticed in the reviews was a few people said they questioned the construction on this. Construction for me looks identical to my 70-200, and I've had the 70-200 for well over a year, maybe 2 years now. Never had any problems with it, but several people said they had to return the lens because of construction issues. One of them said, like, for instance, this ring right here, if I loosen this, you'll see that it will sag, and that's what it's designed for, is this ring right here. You can tighten it so it doesn't sag, perhaps when you're shooting or you bring it down like this. But it looks solid, but just to warn you that there was other people on the B&H website that said they had to return this. I also noticed in the reviews, some people were saying that they were having issues with the image stabilization. When it was turned on, it wouldn't activate until you aggressively move the camera. I didn't really notice that myself. Going back between the 70-200 and this lens, they seem to be very similar in how they operated in terms of, when you lock onto something for a while, how the image stabilization works, and also the IBIS in the camera, how they're working. So I ran this particular test, and what you're going to see here is I'm just going to follow this outline of this tree. I'm shooting crop mode at 200 millimeters on the 70-200. You can see it's not doing that great of a job, but I am also, I'm in crop mode and I'm zoomed all the way. I'm doing this handheld. I practiced it several times before I actually shot the real thing. And then what we're going to do next is we'll go to the 1:400 at 200 millimeters crop mode, just exactly the same. All the settings are on in terms of the image stabilization are set exactly the same as well. I would say maybe I did a little bit better job on the Wonder 400 because maybe I had a little bit more practice to do this kind of zigzag motion. But I would say overall, I didn't run into any of the issues that people were talking about on the B&H reviews. I really enjoyed using this lens. It was a lot of fun to get close in on a subject that was so far away. This would definitely be a lens I'd probably rent over the weekend. I think our local lens rental place rents this out for about $50 a weekend. So this would be a great one to rent. I don't know if I'd ever buy it because my 7200 I use a lot. This one I don't think I'd only use a few weekends a year. So that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this kind of non-review because I didn't really compare it to anything, so to speak. And it was just a lot of fun to shoot with it, to be able to get that close in on such a distant object. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.